site, that site will show you how to explore a word in its environment, I guess. And as I said, you put your own writing in there, you get a certain sort of treatment of your own writing and explore collocations and so on. And I think it can actually suggest alternatives to you as well. Okay, we're going to change channel here. Over to my screen again, 3, 2, 1. And nothing, g'day. Alright. Try again, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, okay. Some of these, so. Okay, we're going to critical thinking. I'd like to cover a bit more in this. We've worked our way down some of it. Public Intellectuals, Theory of Knowledge, remember that book, the IB course. There is a little section on critical thinking and climate change, which is here. Because there's a big debate about that, of course, and about the science. This site it's just a very good area to sort of, I mean, it's an important area for obvious reasons, but as there's a huge debate around the science, there's actually not a huge debate around the science. 97% of climate scientists are very clear on it. 3% differ. So the scientific consensus is pretty strong, but out in the media there's a false debate. Large commercial interests shape the debate in the public area, of course, through media, and we've talked about that. So this side explored, if you're a global warming skeptic, you know this word skeptic? Skeptic, you doubt it, you don't believe it. So climate skeptic, someone who denies climate science, pretty much. And it's a good site because these are the common things you hear. Oh, temperature records unreliable. So what's the reply? This is kind of evidence-based replies. One reason it's good for critical thinking is that if you think of our paediatrics article, most people have sort of positions like, even before you read something like that, you either kind of support rights for lesbians to bring up kids, or you don't. And if you don't, you're probably going to get in there and be more critical of the methodology. That's kind of natural. And if somebody found the study the other way, then the other side would get in there and get into the methodology. So it's often on the ground of methodology that the fight really happens. And it's the same with climate science. Ultimately it's you cherry pick that data. You only selected data from the observational points in the ocean, and therefore it's cooler than if you observe on land, and so you get into all these debates. And that's where and why, I guess, if you get into the climate science debate and read a few things, it will sharpen your ability to assess things like bias sampling, sampling processes, method of data collection, how you interpret the results, how you can distort statistics, typical common patterns. You'll see that sort of being played out in a real debate here. So that's quite a good site, and likewise I've got another link there. Now again, with any research or social issue that is research about social things, they're not just pure science. They're shaped by society, which in turn is shaped by economics and interests. And it's the same with climate science. You can pick any area. I think to be a good critical thinker, I've said it before, that you need two approaches. And we've done a bit of both. You need what we might call the micro and the macro. So you've got your text here, and like those two links before, skeptical science, here's the claim, there's global cooling, it's not really warming. Okay, so you drill into that and you look for your biosample in your cherry picking and whatever. So you go micro-analysis, and are there any fallacies and whatever. You look internally in the text. That's important. Also, though, we know it's shaped by social forces and social influence, isn't it? So what's happening, if you just view it on the micro, you'll get a good understanding, but it's not total. I don't know if you ever arrive at a total understanding, but you certainly get out a better understanding of the issue and why that person might be saying it, why they might shape their argument, if you look at the broader social forces and the history behind the debate. That's almost as important. So with that broader framework, it often informs and illuminates what's going on in the actual text. So, for example, this Merchants of Doubt, this woman, Professor Naomi Oreskes, Professor of Philosophy of History of Science, has written quite an interesting book, and she's been interviewed on the Science Show quite a bit about, I think I might have mentioned this before, how fossil fuel companies, as it says, how a handful of scientists obscured the truth on issues from tobacco smoke to global warming. It is the same public relations companies who were hired back in the 50s and 60s and 70s to by tobacco companies because the evidence was emerging that smoking caused cancer. So obviously huge threat to financial interests. So the tobacco companies hired consultants and they said, don't try to disprove it. Don't go there because you probably won't win. The science will win. What you have to do is you have to just inject an element of doubt. And if you can get just people wondering, is it or not, that's enough. Because that will mean that people will still smoke. Oh, I'm not really sure if it causes cancer. Keep having your packet a day or whatever. So you just break that, you just weaken the psychological message. And yeah, same for the climate science. Okay, just don't actually fight it fully, but just your focus is to create a doubt. And that's why it's called Merchants of Doubt, because they sold. These people, $5,000 a day or whatever, sold this advice to the fossil fuel companies. So they're merchants, they're selling doubt. And it's a description of that. And there's a good Science Show podcast, if you're interested, of Naomi Oreskes, and there's a transcript there that you can hear. And she's been interviewed a lot on this issue. And it's become kind of standard understanding in the field that that's what's going on. So my point is there, that if you know that these large corporations, that's their main strategy, then when you look at the actual text, you probably understand, oh, now I see why they're writing that paragraph. That's their motivation. You have a better grasp, But you can only get that if you've kind of got the bigger picture first, So it's always this, I think most understandings come almost from a kind of a interaction between the macro and the micro, and one informs the other. Knowing about the micro gives you a better picture of the macro, and the macro gives you a picture about the micro. It's a kind of, this is actually dialectics. It goes back to Hegel. Hegel said the big picture of something is what he called it the totality. And he put this emphasis on understanding the totality of something as well as possible before you kind of work with what he called the singularity. He just had different terminology. But overall, for example, this happens a lot. If you think of the news, it's lots of little micros, isn't it? Oh, there was this attack by ISIS, and there was this coup in Nigeria, and there's lots of little dots. But there's not a lot of work on kind of connecting it all. And that's for, I think, various structural reasons. But this becomes very important. So there's a lot of focus on micro. And if you think of professions, people get trained up in micro areas. Specialists, very, very skilled specialists. but they lack a total understanding of their profession within the economy, within history, within society. This is really lacking. We're creating lots of what we call blinker, you know, the horse that walks on the blinker people. And of course that makes it easier for social control over it, if you're not thinking on that broader scale. Generally the humanities, histories, you know, philosophy, literature, arts, does, but overall that's shrinking as governments pay less and less funding to the humanities. That's a strong trend in neoliberal economies, to shrink the humanities. And it's not just an economic thing. It's not just to save money. It's partly, you'll end up with a less critical population. You can massage and manipulate it in just purely profitable directions, you know. So it's kind of up to us as to sort of develop a healthy civil society, healthy democratic civil society, to, you know, work on the macro as much as we can and get that broader understanding. So, yeah, 2 levels of criticality. In relation to that, there is, that unfortunately has died. It's an audio book. It's a brilliant book. It's called Disciplined Minds. It's about professional people. And you're probably heading on to be a professional. This link works. This one. This guy, Jeff Schmidt, he was an editor of Physics Today, a very high-ranking popular journal. He was sacked from the company, partly due to his sort of criticality. But he wrote this book, very, very interesting book called Disciplined Minds. Now, what it's about is, he argues that our educational system, our professional system, the whole ideological system trains professionals to think almost identically in a uniform way, with very little variance of this broader thinking. So professionals are sort of trained up in the micro very, very well. But far from getting a broader understanding of social issues, they're actually in the process, it actually narrows and narrows and narrows. He starts, I think, with a good little anecdote which demonstrates that he used to catch the train, I think, from Brooklyn across to New York, the subway, or was it the Bronx? I can't remember. He caught it from a working class area because he was from that area originally. And on the train, he noticed people reading. And people would be reading newspapers and books and different sort of magazines and, you know, sports articles and blah, 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 you know. And that was that particular train into New York. And then as he got higher up and probably became an editor or whatever, he moved to a more professional area, higher, upper middle class. And he caught this train. And all the people on it pretty much were professional types, judging by their appearance. What were they reading? They're more educated, right? They've got much better vocabulary, reading capacity is much, much better, much more sophisticated. Are they reading more widely and lots of different sorts of stuff? No. They're all sitting there, all reading the New York Times. So what's happened is it's narrowed. The actual diversity of their thinking and their breadth of their variety of the way they think has narrowed overall.
Isn't that scary? Like when you notice this train, everyone was reading the same like magazine, maybe different articles, but same like
yeah.
Like he just looked up and
exactly. That is an alarming. That's what he was kind of disturbed by, and it set him thinking along the lines of, okay, what is causing this? What are the educational factors at mainly at tertiary level that are doing this? What are the factors once you're in the job that are helping to create what he calls conformity? Well, not he calls, anyone would describe it as that. Conformity, so form and con together, so the things come together. So the book is an examination of a whole series of things: the educational process, the workplace, and how workplaces just very subtly, not obviously, they don't say, think like that and you'll be sacked. It's not like that. It's just lots of little subtle messages kind of every day. A lot of them are unconscious about how we're slightly massaged into this uniformity and this conformity. And of course that helps the overall system run, and it's threatening. Now, here's the question: why is it that professionals are shaped in this way and the working class are not? Why does the system focus on getting professional people's minds so kind of lined up and conformist? His argument is professionals have decision-making power. So if you have professionals who have much more broader criticality and questioning assumptions and so on, that's not so good for business, is it? Whereas working class people, they're just at a machine, either a computer, producing text for administration or making something. They've got a lot less decision-making power. A society doesn't have to put a lot of energy into controlling their forms of thinking. It doesn't represent a fundamental danger to the system. So anyway, that's the sort of thing he's exploring. Now, you guys are no doubt destined for professional life. To what degree do you think you're being shaped by this? Do you want to avoid it? Maybe you want to embrace it because, okay, that's the way you get on. Anyway, the issues are there to explore. And it was available as an audio book. I remember a few years ago, I painted a whole house just listening to this book. It was great. kept me painting. You can certainly find the book out there, but it's probably around still. I've just lost the connection to the audio book. Very nicely read, actually. If you ever find it, please send me the link. But a few people have picked up on it. This woman here, the next link, she makes reference to it. She's a nurse, and she's involved in a kind of union industrial campaign, which of course, threatens authority to some degree and challenges it. And she makes reference to Jeff Schmidt and his work. And I think it's important simply because professionals don't have that self-concept. They think, I'm well educated and I have all this sort of broad understanding of the world, and I'm actually very diverse and free in my thinking. And his argument is the opposite. It's just an interesting challenge to our self-concept, as professionals. I think there's quite a bit of substance to the argument. This woman's looking at, social movements, so like women's movements, working class union movements, Afro-American movements and so on. And she says how middle class professionals get in there, they're feeling quite confident, like I'm educated, I know where this movement should go, and they volunteer and so on. And it actually has this conservative effect. Just as the professional's vision is narrow and fits the system, her argument is, it's a negative influence on social movements overall. So I think it's interesting because I spent some time in the Greens, and the Greens overall are fairly professional and educated, but I found them quite limited actually in the degree, if you like, to which they would challenge the system. It's quite narrow. They wouldn't really challenge some really basic assumptions. And in terms of exploring total anti-capitalist thinking or issues, they wouldn't go there, just as an example. So that's that little bunch of links there. There's a bit of economics there. If you do want I used to use this in the Marx group, this Capitalism 101, it's very clever. If you want one of the, Marxian economics, it's complex, but it's one of your best set of tools to really understand the macro, absolutely. This fellow, Brendan Cooney, put together some videos, just cartoons actually. He just got cartoons from the 50s and 60s and connected them all up, and it's a really good set of little tutorials on basic Marxian concepts, and it works well. I'll just wait for that to load. Here it is. Famous mural, Mexican Diego Rivera mural. So it goes through, what is the law of value? How do we figure out how much that pen is worth? Is it supply and demand, or is it something else? Marxian economists would argue it's not supply and demand, it's later time. So labour time is the fundamental unit of economics. So look, there's a transcript. It's quite a nice little listening exercise. You've got, with each one of these, you've got this little package here. 10 links. It'll take you through. What is the fetishism of commodities? Well, it's everywhere. The fetishism of commodities. People are obsessed with consuming, aren't they? Fetishism, where you believe that an object has kind of an emotional or actual social power. So by having a big red sports car, just that ownership gives you certain qualities. You know, the emotion of objects, that's what fetishism is. Yeah.
Does it come from the word fetish?
It does, comes from the word
Does
fetish.
that mean crave or something like that? Like when someone says, I have a fetish for this?
Yeah, a fetish is like an obsession.
Okay.
You really, you know, you
So
get
it kind of
fixated
connects to
on
like
one
a
particular thing.
like a-
You kind of get fixed on
Okay.
it. You know, like I want that sports car, I've got to have that latest iPhone, or, I mean, that's the simple sense of fetishism. Marx would argue every single commodity actually has a certain amount of fetishism. I'll just play you a little bit to give you the feel of it. Each one of these has a transcript, and I'll just see if this is on. You see the transcript here? You see they're very old cartoons.
There are a lot of people that are really powerful in the world. Presidents, CEOs, bankers, leaders of movements. But there is an object, a thing, that is more powerful than any of them. This object is money. Money?
Yeah, so I mean it's a simple statement. Why is he showing that little cartoon? Because here are toys, they're just things, aren't they? But in the cartoon they become alive, they get this life force. That is fetishism, where you think an object has this force that it doesn't actually really have. But as a society, we project our inner emotions onto that object and we give it. Like a lot of religions do this. If you think of statues, and so, you know, you pray to this just lump of bronze, but you think it has this power to do something to your life, or you wear something, you know, and you feel it has this. So yeah, wearing charms or symbols, this is fetishism. Marx argues the greatest fetish in capitalist society is money. So, you know, have I got any? Yeah. I mean, that little bit of metal has social power, doesn't it? Enormous social, not that enormous. But you know, a big lump of $100 bills has enormous social power. It's just stuff, isn't it? It's just paper. But we've all fetishized. So kind of social psychological notion. But this is incredibly important in the sense that ultimately this stuff controls the entire world, and you know it causes wars and people starve and whatever. But it's all, in other words, I mean Marx's overall argument is objects and this particular system controls humanity. Humanity doesn't control the way it produces and distributes stuff itself. So this system has got out of control and is dominating us, and true liberation is about us reclaiming the power over an economy. Fetishism is part of that alienation, that loss of control.
Money is really powerful. It makes people, societies, and countries do all sorts of things. The pursuit of money as an end in itself occupies many people's lives and is the driving force for economic growth. And all over society, money acts as a symbol of status, prestige, and social power. The funny thing about money is that it is just an object. Nowadays, it's not even a valuable
Got a link problem.
object.
You get the feel of it. You know, it's fairly easy to watch. If you want a good sort of set of ideas that are very powerful. I'm not saying, believe it at all. Throw all your doubts and questions at it, but it will, in my experience, give you an enormous depth of analysis, and it can go on for years, of course. This is just an introduction. But if you do want the introduction to that, that's a really nice series, and it gets more advanced. He gets into crisis theory and the falling rate of profit and so on. Yeah, and as he says, super advanced shit there. Capital Volume 3. So he takes you right through all the volumes of Capital. That is pretty tricky stuff. We've got a study group at the moment looking at this stuff. He writes very detailed breakdowns. He's just a pretty young fella. Musician as well, but yeah, he's written analyses of pretty much every chapter of Capital there. But that link is there. Capitalism, he spells it with a K. If you ever just so I guess people can find him on the web. It's not how you spell it. It's a C, isn't it? Capitalism 101. What does the 101 mean? Basic, that's right. It's like anything. It's Psychology 101, Economics 101. Yeah. Yeah, that's an infinite thing. It can go on forever. I will leave it there today. I think that's enough. We need to do other things. So watch that in your own time. As I say, there's a transcript underneath if it gets a little difficult to hear. Let's have a break till maybe 1:15, and then we'll do an hour and a quarter of your critical review summary. Yep. People are critical thinking. You've all been thinking critically over the weekend, no doubt. Done your summary. All right, we're going to swap summaries. However much has been done, and get some feedback from each other. And also, if we get a bit of time, a bit of brainstorming to write the next bit. You know how we did that bit on evaluation on Friday? Just if we do get enough time, we'll maybe do 20 minutes of that. Because tomorrow, we'll do some writing in class for the next section. So I assume, you've done your summary and you're getting a bit of feedback. Tomorrow, we'll have an hour where you bring your ideas in and you just write. It's not an exam, it's just creating some time, just so it's less homework time really. So you write, and then we'll do it Wednesday as well. All right. And so this discussion today will help. That's right. There were 2 sessions, so just to help you kind of get your first draft down, and with me around and others around if you've got any questions, and then write it up at night time. In the afternoon.
About the words, you mentioned if it's